Okay. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Program and Policy Committee and Communications and the Planning Committee for February 16th, our 10 a.m. Joint meeting. So I will call that to order. Carla, has the press been notified?
Yes, the press has been notified, and we do have a quorum for both meetings.
Great. So with that, do we have any public participation?
Not that I know of.
I didn't see
John,
it.
have you had anything?
No, ma'am, I have not.
Thanks.
Good. Not that good we didn't have any public participation. We'd love to have it, but good that we've checked that box. I'm going to turn the meeting now over to Chair Lively, and she will move through our agenda.
Chair Lively apologizes for flirting in the last meeting and being silly.
I actually like to call you Chair now instead of
Right. No. That's cool.
no. That's what I would refer to you now, Gail.
Chair Lively. It's better than some things, probably. No, I'm sorry. I did it again.
Go right ahead.
Joint policy. Oh, I'm sorry. Joint communication planning and programs and policy held on May the 19th, 22 were included in your packets. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I move we approve the minutes.
That was Kathy.
Second.
I usually do a hand gesture, so Kathy can go.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I seconded this, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
All right. The Communications and Planning Committee, a report on the progress that the corporation has made and the strategic goals of the committee.
Can I ask, are we going to vote since we have
we didn't vote on the minutes? I thought. Do you want? Are you making a motion, Kathy? I can't hear.
Kathy, you're on mute.
There was
I
a motion.
moved and Chad seconded, but I don't recall an actual vote. I could have blinked or something.
Yes, there was a motion and a second, and there has not yet been a vote.
Okay. Yeah. Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're through that. Thank you, Kathy. We are going to work on our strategic goals, the committee, the planning committee, and at this point, I will turn it over to John, who is the Deputy Executive Director for KHC in planning. So, John.
Thank you, Chair Lively. Thank you, Chair Knopson. And good morning on this dreary morning, members of the board and these committees. So I'm excited to talk to you about the second quarter of our current fiscal year and give a brief update. Happy to address any questions you might have. And some of this is going to be just a little bit of a framing for right before we talk about our progress. So I'll remind everyone that the annual corporate planning process is overseen by multiple committees of the board, of which two of those are jointly convening today. The overarching strategies is overseen and a recommendation is made to the full board in May for the communications and planning by the Communications and Planning Committee. The allocation plan is reviewed and a recommendation is made from the Programs and Policy Committee to the full board in May. And then the operating budget is overseen by the Finance Cabinet that is meeting later today, this afternoon. So again, just a high level overview of where we are in the year as it relates to all of our various planning organizational initiatives. In January, our finance department looks at all of our cost, salary, benefits, overhead, revenue. That is going on right now in preparation for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as looking back on where we are and giving a report of where we currently are in our fiscal year. So as we convene on the 16th of February, as joint committees, we are working through crafting our new overarching strategies that we will present to you later in the year and for adoption by the board of directors, a recommendation by the board of directors a little later in the year. And then again, just for the board to review this annually, and for this committee, the Communications and Planning Committee to look at it and ask any questions. Then our allocation plan, which is all of our financial resources, over $1 billion of investments across various programs for the corporation and really for the state and the Commonwealth, is reviewed by the Policy and Program Committee. And again, a recommendation by the board later in the year. That is done in April. And so you can see all of that is in with the goal of in May for all of our budget, all of our allocation planning, and all of our business strategies, which should align and do align to be made to make the board aware of in May for the future year, but also to provide progress on where we currently are. And then as it relates to the reporting and tracking, we will give an update in February, which is what we're doing today. And then we will also give an update in August, so semi-annually. The one that we're looking at today is rear facing. The one that we're going to be looking at later in the year is a little forward facing in May about what we're going to do. And then in August, we'll tell you for a full year what we did for our planning process. So wanted to give that as a context before I jump in and talk about where we are on the second quarter. Last thing I will say, if you can scroll it a little bit further down, I'll remind everyone of our fiscal 23 overarching strategies. The first one is to provide holistic housing solutions. And we want to align our programs. We want to continue to implement our COVID relief programs, use data and analytics to shape our policies, and again, identify any limiting factors for the programs which we operate or the administrator of. So that's really focused on the housing programs portion of what we do. Secondly is the financial piece, which really is overseen by Jim Statler, the CFO, and his responsibilities, and really the corporation's responsibilities are to make sure that we're mitigating the financial impact not only of COVID-19, but really operating all of our legacy programs and looking at some of our lending programs and looking at how we optimize the utilization of our admin fees and look at opportunities to deploy the mission, which you'll hear a little bit about later at 2 if you're doing the finance committee, but you'll briefly hear about that as the allocation plan. We'll talk through that a little bit to support our mission. And lastly, make sure that we are being prudent with our stewardship of all the funds and effectively managing risk. Last but not least is sustaining and advancing our core competencies. We're continuously looking at technology, remote work environments, expanding our workforce development efforts to make sure that we retain excellent people, that we recruit excellent people, that and exceptional talent and promote. And we'll talk a little more about that as well. And then last but not least is, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about this, is what we're doing on the diversity, equity, and inclusion effort. So you'll see a little bit of a breakout on that a little bit later, and you can expect more to come from that. Okay. Any questions before I jump into the fiscal 23 accomplishments from any committee members? If not, I'm going to hit a few highlights here and then expand on a couple of accomplishments, and feel free to ask any questions throughout this. The first one is the 908 loans per employee. Our target was 800, and that has been something that I would affectionately call it right sizing, and making sure that our loan servicing area is operating within sort of the industry standard norms. So that's under Jim Statler's purview, and he has continued to make sure that the volume of loans that we service and are appropriately serviced by, and we have the right number of employees to do that. And that's a lot of efficiencies operationally, technologically, and some things that our loan servicing department is doing. Secondly, in our single family line of business, our target was $500 million or $500 million in loan production. Through as of 12/31, we are a little over 50% there. So you can see that $270 million loan production number. I'm certainly not an expert in finance, loan servicing, or single family production, but interest rates, things of that nature make it very much a challenge. Again, Jim does a phenomenal job with that and has a full report later this afternoon at 2 related to that. Last but not least, as it supports some of the second strategy related to our financial stewardship of dollars, is the secondary market gains. I can tell you this, that number, $2.91 million, is through 12/31 is significantly lower than it has been in several years. And I cannot opine on the ins and outs of that, nor would I try to, but Jim is monitoring that, and he's got some additional strategies that he is looking at for the corporation. I will say that our target for the fiscal year is in the $8 to $9 million range. So we are currently not on track to hit that. So last but not least, on the tenant assistance area, as it relates to inspection fees, specifically management and occupancy fees. Those are fees that we receive for doing management and occupancy review inspections that are associated with our project-based and tenant-based programs. But that is $281,844. That is significant because for a long time we didn't do that during COVID. And then secondly, it helps us, as you've heard before, our project-based contract administration, we earn administrative fees on that above and beyond our expenses, and that is used to advance and further the mission of the organization. So that's sort of the financial sort of pieces of this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the programmatic next. And the very palatable real number is that 57, if you don't mind not scroll so much, that's perfect. That 5,700 households, those are real people in the Commonwealth that are served through our homeless programs, our emergency shelter grant program, our continuum of care program, our HOPWA program, our ESG coronavirus CV funds. So that is through the 6 months ending 12/31, and we will continue to see that number grow. But those are real people and real families that we're serving through our programs. The next item is the 900 units. So the first one was households, but units created or preserved via the tax exempt bond program in our multifamily program. So that's significant because that's our tax exempt bonds, but we just issued, and I think hopefully you all received a notification from Winston about our low income housing tax credit program. We have awarded funds to do that, and have created over 700 units. So all is well there. And again, those are units, affordable units for folks to be able to move into, and that are being created and or preserved in our multifamily area. The next few are going to be about areas that are related to business services, but also what we're looking at internally, but also externally. So I hope you all had an opportunity, and if not, Molly Tate can certainly provide insight into this at a later date. But we have launched our podcast and blog. That is an ongoing series. And so we launched the first one. The second one's coming out here shortly, and it will be a series with various housing partners and around housing topics. So I'm hopeful that you all will take an opportunity to listen to that, or if you have more questions about that or ideas about that, you can send those to me or to Molly, and we'll take care of that. Next is our minority workforce representation is 16%. That is up slightly from last quarter, but that is up, I would say, more than slightly from years past. So we have also, I'll talk a little more about this as we go through here. So, but we've also designated in our employee services area a corporate trainer, as well as a recruiter, to not only recruit the best and the brightest and the most talented, but also to retain the folks that we have that are very talented. But I'll speak a little bit to the recruiter piece. There are some things that we're doing related to an internship program, but also looking at our diversity and equity in our hiring practices. So we now have a designated role and a designated job description for to make a concerted effort to continue to do that. So we've also, in technology services, implemented some new security enhancements, as well as a new co-location site for redundancy in the world we're living in, where everything is technological. So we're operating not out of a system in Frankfort, Kentucky today, and we're operating out of a lot of different places where there's redundancy. We also have additional circuits that are coming into this building and really connecting people like we all are on this call in various areas and locations despite the rain. So last couple of items I've wanted to hit the highlights on. We have a new security system. And again, I'll just say this, the significant improvements in our facilities infrastructure. We have 3 owned buildings in Frankfort, Kentucky, that house our staff, either full-time or part-time or on a hybrid basis. So it's like anything, we want to continue to keep the facilities and the infrastructure specifically operational. And then our corporate planning and accountability area, which you're going to hear from Kendrick Vonderschmidt a little in just a few minutes about the area he oversees. But we've had 40% of our available admin realized through 12/31. And when I mean admin, those are administrative fees for the myriad of programs that we administer, and they pay for the operational cost in portion, in full, or part of all the staff that operate those programs and all the overhead expenses. So it's vitally important that we recoup those. I will say this, we have made a much more concerted effort to recoup all available fees that we can. So kudos to Kendrick and his staff, and we've got some tools in place that that will help us to be able to do this a little bit more. And then lastly, and certainly very, very importantly, we've enhanced our demographic data and publicly viewable data. I'll address both of those a little bit separately. I'm going to start with the publicly viewable data. As you all know, obviously Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky have had natural disasters and are still recovering. One of the things that we have done as a corporation that I hope you all are aware of is there are available housing units that are people can actually go and to a tool and to a link and see real time where units are. People can add to them, and it's a resource. That resource has been viewed thousands and thousands of times by people that need housing. So that's just a small sliver. We've got other things available. If you have not, on our website, there are publicly viewable multiple visualizations of data and information longitudinally, and that's a continued library and bank that will continue to sort of be built on. So, and then I want to spend some time talking about the demographic data. And Molly, if you don't mind to maybe transition down just a little bit. So The demographic data that we have historically tracked has been sort of at a very high level. The corporation, as we've stated in our overarching strategies, is really taking a little more of a deeper dive into looking at some of our demographic data. So we've explored additional data sources for benchmarks for our programs. So I've reported to you on oftentimes this committee on our workforce and what it looks like, and so that's very important, and that's highly important, and we can talk about that separately. But this is really about programs, and so for the first time in my tenure, I can say this: we're using data from, for example, the Census Bureau's CHAZ data set, looking at households, homeowner versus renter status, households, area median incomes, racial backgrounds, cost burdens, overcrowding, inadequate plumbing. That is just a very small sliver of things you'll see going forward. But the real point of the sharper point of this is we are looking program by program for and understanding the target population for that program, what it's supposed to be serving, who it's supposed to be serving, whether it's AMI, whether it's renters, whether it's homeowners, and then actually looking at the data set and seeing what a benchmark is, and then being able to report that back through our planning process quarterly and then semi-annually to the board. So here's a small sliver of household by race. I'm not going to give you this super deep analysis of it, but you can see that the white alone non-Hispanic population of home ownership is 86.90%. Again, footnoted data. There's a lot of details here. Go ahead, Kathy.
You skipped the next one is ownership rental.
I'm sorry.
Households in general. You can
Thank you.
Look through it already. It's very interesting.
Thank you, Kathy. You're exactly right. I jumped ahead of myself. So this is all Kentucky households by race. You can see this. Then do you mind to scroll? There you go. Renters by race. So you can see that number is particularly a little different, and the discrepancy between the minority population and white population, which we've talked about in this committee and which we're aware of as a corporation. So, but I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of sort of what's to come and what you can expect to see related to our data demographically by program. So with that, I'm going to talk and make my final sort of close out on this portion of the presentation on where do we go from here and where are we. So as I stated earlier, we're in the midst of planning the operating budget and looking at all of our scorecards for the new year. And you're going to hear from Kendrick here shortly about the allocation plan. So we're going to be doing that as the spring comes into season. And in May, we will present back to the joint committee as well as the board at the May board meeting on May 25th. And Jim will be presenting the operating budget to the finance committee. All of the items that we talk through with the budget, the allocation plan, the strategies, the data, the information, they're integrated, and you can see that they inform one another. So we have to pay for the mission that we're charged to operate. We have to be forward facing and think about what we're actually doing. And then we have to allocate the resources that we receive and or generate and to further the mission of affordable housing in the Commonwealth. So with that being said, I'm happy to entertain any questions, but I'm going to turn it back over to Gail if there aren't any questions, but thank you all. Yes, Kathy.
I just want to add, and probably many of you know, I have been so thrilled at the increase in our hiring, and the way it happened was through COVID. And so clearly something in our old method blocked these talented people from getting in because you have, so this internship may be one of the answers to that. So I actually, and I would suggest this to all of you, I'm trying to find a researcher. I'm using my friends at U of L to look into how that change occurred so that we can go on the road and be known for having developed a strategy for increasing minority hiring of people able to do the job and figuring out what were the impediments before. So all of you, if you have some connections of, at a university, of someone who might want to study that, this is not only a great case for others to see, but I think KHC should be like, aren't we great? So there you go.
Thank you, Kathy, for your comments.
Me. Thank you so much, John, for all the hard work you put in every day. Sometimes I don't know how you guys do such a great job. That's it for the Communications and Planning Committee. Is on show right now. So Kendrick, where'd he go?
Hey there, Gail. Thank you. Thank you, Gail, and thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Yes, Wendy wasn't able to be here today. However, I prepare these reports for her, so I'm very familiar with the reports. You want to scroll down to the next slide? So this is the allocation plan actuals through Q2 of 2023, fiscal year 2023. There are 3 sections here. The first will be on grant and fee income. The second will be on the program dollars that we deliver by program. We can stay on this first slide. And the third will be on the programs dollars that we deliver by where those funds come from. So let's talk through each of those sections one by one. This first slide shows the grant and fee income that we generate through the first 2 quarters. And these are based on a percentage basis of what we expected to experience through the first 2 quarters. You will see that the greater majority of these lines are somewhere between 40 and 60%, exactly where we would want to be. We're shooting for 50% of the way through the year. Ones that jump out at you right here is that ESG line that goes all the way across, and we're at looks like 120% for the fiscal year so far. That is experienced expenses, but also experienced admin revenue. We have plenty of revenue from that bucket. There's no reason to be concerned that we're overspending there or spending down our grant too quickly. A couple of other grants on here that are on the low side. We have COC, the HOF program, and the Home Art program. And that is mostly, we thought we were going to have more expenses on those programs than we have so far in the fiscal year. And we just have not been able to bring in the admin revenue to match those expenses. So once again, from a budget standpoint, we didn't have expenses, but we didn't have admin. We also didn't have expenses to match those. In general, if you go to this next slide, this is that same information, except on a actual per dollar basis. So as you can see, for the fiscal year at the bottom there, we were trying to bring in we're predicted to bring in $47.5 million through the end of the year. And here we are 2 quarters in, and we brought in $22.5 million of 47% of our goal so far. So we're right on track where we want to be with about 50% of the way through the year. Thank you. Next, we can talk about our program dollars, and these are the awards that we've made to our partners across the state, or in some cases, the actual money that has gone out to individual recipients. These are those awards through the first 2 quarters, and these are organized by the program areas that do this. So if we start at the top, those are our weatherization and LIHEAP programs. You'll see that we've already made the awards for weatherization and LIHEAP. That's very normal for this time of year, that we make those awards early and they slowly spend those awards down throughout the year. That third line there that we have not made any of those awards, that's our new pot of money. That's the a bipartisan infrastructure legislation, which is the same way that we use the weatherization dollars previously. We just have a huge pot of it. We recently had that those funds, the budget for that program approved by the Department of Energy, and we'll now able to start making additional awards to our subrecipients there. This second section and this third section, this is HCA and multifamily, respectively. You will see not as much activity. We're not reaching that 100% threshold on a lot of these lines here. In fact, we're reaching 0% on a lot of these lines. That is because we received a lot of our HUD dollars, our home grant, our ESG grant, our HOPWell grant, and our NHTF grant, and our LIHTC tax credits. We received all of those in January. LIHTC tax credits became available in January, and everything else was a couple of days, or about 2 weeks into January, we signed the contracts to receive those funds. We have since then made those awards, but all of that data will show up in the Q3 quarter. That being said, you will see we have made our COC and some ESG cares funds. Those funds come in at a little different time. We've made awards to those programs as well. If we continue down to the single family section on that same slide, what I'll note here is that our DAP and single family mortgage programs are performing about as well as we expected, maybe a little bit behind schedule for the fiscal year, and specifically the one program there specifically the one program there that is underperforming is the credit, the mortgage credit certificate program is not as performing as fast as our normal DAP for the fiscal year. If I would draw your attention to the two housing counseling lines, those are the HUD funds and the HAF funds. Those trade off as to when we can bill for them. So one will kind of move for a quarter, and then one will kind of move for the quarter. So I would expect the HAF line, that first line under single families, to move forward in later quarters. Finally, tenant assistance program. This program runs like a metronome. It always hits 25, 50, 75% every quarter, and it has continued to not fail me so far. This fourth slide is that same information again in a table. Nothing extra to bring to the table right now. We want to move on to the third and final percentage-based slide. This is the same information that we just talked about, except reorganized by where the funds come from. So as you will see, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund and our home dollars, that's the first two sections, not made a lot of awards there. Just as I discussed previously, those funds are tied together. So we have had the Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars. Those are state funds. We don't have to wait on HUD for them. However, we like to mix those with HUD funds. We'd like to give our home builders some of each, and so we make a lot. And in our multifamily projects, we'll mix AHTF funds in with our tax credits. So because of that, we haven't made a lot of AHTF awards either. Once again, those will be experienced in Q3. The final section down at the bottom is our Housing Assistance Fund, referred to as HAF dollars. That funds our DAP and several other smaller buckets of funding throughout the corporation. The one thing I will draw your attention to at the very bottom is the Targets of Opportunity grant. That is at 170% of our original goal for the fiscal year. We did make additional grants to our partners in Eastern and Western Kentucky to respond to their various natural disasters. So I've talked to you a couple of times about what happened in Q3, and if we can continue down to my last slide and skip right past this one. We did make a multifamily award round with our LIHTC tax credits. And we mixed $12 million in with NHTF, home, AHTF, and some home ARP money And then that Home ARP program is the American Rescue Plan Act that we mixed about $8.5 million in with these various tax credits. And this just kind of gives you an idea of how we pair these dollars with those tax credits whenever we whenever we award these tax credit funding rounds. We try to use these funds to plug some holes in the projects and get these projects off the ground, which some of these projects otherwise would not happen if we did not use these gap funds. With that, I will open up. I'm open for any questions that anyone has. Yes, Kathy.
Well, you know what I'm going to ask is that along with what John has said about understanding the programs, are we going to get it sort of by region or area, how allocations are made? I recall that I was concerned that how much, for instance, Louisville gives into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and how much it gets out over a series of years. It's not supposed to be quid pro quo every single time, and was convinced by looking at all the allocations and how they are awarded by area. So will that continue to happen? Because I know you did it once, when I was, sort of timing off. So I hope that continues, because being aware of where it goes and to whom it goes is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We have some of that data available already, and I can make that further data available. Is there a specific program other than AHTF that you're interested in?
Well, what happened was AHTF didn't necessarily go to Louisville, but the tax credits, it was just sort of by looking at all the allocation for rental, it was for single family. I was convinced that we were doing a very good job of fair allocation. So it's kind of all of it, how it's distributed and how we know what's going on.
Yeah, 100%, Kathy. Not specific to just AHTF, but we are very much aware of the geographic regions, the locations, urban, rural, and we do have the capacity, but also, Kendrick and his team, and certainly under the direction of Wendy and our executive team, we do look at those things by whether it's congressional district, ad district, location. So, yes.
Kendrick, and thank you, I'm almost going to say thank you, Kathy, but again, I should have started out this meeting by saying no more Latin. I'm Latined out already. You already did the quid pro quo already on me. So, I do have a question for you, Kendrick, on the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. Have they come out, or the DOE has given me any indication of when the guides are going to be down? Or do you know?
I don't know, but I can find out and follow up with you.
Yeah, I've been trying to track it, and I didn't know if you'd heard anything further or not. We on our end, or my end, I've not heard it in my day job, so I didn't know if they were going to give you any indication as well, because that's a huge chunk. That's a great chunk. Yeah.
It's a large chunk of money.
Yeah, I can't even come up with that number in Latin. Can't even fathom it. Oh, great. So let's see. Kendrick, you still have the floor, I believe.
I have one more question, and I don't think it's one Kendrick can answer, but we do a lot of weatherization, and we know that there's going to be the large environmental money coming, as well as the infrastructure money coming. And is KHC at all taking a stance on the proposed 2 gas-fired power plants that will affect Louisville and Lexington as outmoded, to create new gas-fired power plants, and how it would affect our competitive applications for any of those monies. So probably some money will be awarded just because of how big we are by state, but they'll be competitive. And if we are known as the state that is going full tilt boogie on gas fired instead of renewables, how that will affect us. It's not a question you can ask Kendrick, but it's one that perhaps KHC should consider and maybe speak to the Public Service Commission about.
I've taken that down to bring to our deputies and executive director.
Thank you.
Was that Sam talking? Who just said that?
That was Kendrick.
Kathy, we will definitely take that under advisement. And again, I don't expect Kendrick to answer that one, but as a corporation, I think we can look at that and we can also provide an answer on that. So.
All right, I believe next on our agenda we have the COVID era funds. So update on the pandemic release. John, I know that we don't want to go into this too deeply.
Sure.
Would you?
I'll just give a very high level update. You'll hear more about this on next Thursday at the board meeting, when Ms. Smith is not ill and is not experiencing some issues. So I certainly am not an appropriate stand-in for all the hard work that Wendy has overseen. But I can tell you that our HHERF, that program, that is we're no longer taking applications. We're looking at our staffing related to that. I cannot say enough about the massive amount of people that were helped by this program. We have some other programs, for example, HOPE, that will continue and is sort of, I would say, ramping up and sort of staying, we're ramping that up. So I'm going to ask that we defer that until Ms. Smith is here and she can give a very robust overview of all of the pandemic relief programs by program and what's going on with what, and maybe be able to answer some of the questions, Barry, you asked about the, additional dollars down the road and what we're doing. So long term. So unless anyone has any objectives.
Thank you, John. All right.
Okay.
If I think that is all from John and myself. If you want to take it over, Barry?
So I'll take it back. Do we have any other informational items that we need to bring before? Of course, I think we're meeting next, on the 23rd at 2 o'clock is the next board meeting. So we'll have that. Is there any other items for the board or the staff? They're not on the agenda?
Well, I have one for communications in terms of.
Nothing in Latin.
It's not. We did a wonderful tribute to Lynn Llewellyn, and we had a video, and it was sent in. And I would like us to amend that video, because that video, 20 minutes long, maybe 15, 20 minutes long, did not contain one person of color who had a nice thing to say about Lynn. And I think that's a disservice. I think there are plenty of people who would bring diversity to that video. And I would love to see that amended, because if it's on our website, We are known by the company we keep. And if the only people we can think to talk about Lynn, I just think it's a disservice to him, and I would love to see that amended.
Thank you, Kathy, and we will be in touch about that, okay?
Good. Any other things not on the agenda? Well, hearing none, I always love to entertain this. I'll entertain an adjournment motion.
So moved.
Gail.
Hey,
Sorry.
Stay on for a while. We can start talking about contracts again, and I think we have a motion and a second by someone. I didn't we caught that. So all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, I think we will see each other via Zoom next week.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.